Welcome from my side. Ferber is my name. I'm head of consulting at Camunda. And today I want to talk about Camunda and RPA. As Felix already mentioned, I'm the replacement, so I kind of have to improvise. I hope everything works fine. It was very short term, but I think that should be okay. So, as you probably all know, RPA is a hype topic. And this is also the reason why we wanted to have a closer look on RPA and see how we can kind of combine Camunda and RPA, and if there are any use cases, if that is easy to make or not. And this is these results I would like to show you right now. Before I go into my presentation, I would like to ask the question, who is already using an RPA solution? Oh, that's interesting. In the session before, we had no one. So you're right, perfectly right here. Then one more question. Who of you has already tried to combine Camunda and RPA? Okay, at least some. So that is interesting. Maybe we can also discuss that afterwards. It would be interesting to see how your experiences on that were. But before we go into that, I would like to start with my presentation. So what is RPA all about? I have a lot of demo stuff here. So imagine you have a typical order process. So you have a customer, and they have a Camunda process, and the customer sends you an order. And within that process, we have a first service task that can run fully automatic without any user interaction. And then we have got two systems, an ERP system and a CRM system, and you also want to integrate that. And nowadays, these kind of systems, they have technical APIs, like REST, like SOAP, other APIs. So it's quite straightforward to integrate them in a way that you really can automatically interact or interchange data with them. But still, there are applications in the market and probably in your organizations that don't have these technical APIs. So then the only way to interchange or exchange data, get data in and out, is the UI. And how did we solve this here? So here, this is solved with a user task. That means an employee goes into that CRM system, for example, and creates the customer, or with the ERP system, he creates the order. And that is exactly where RPA comes in. So RPA is basically, you could also call it macro recorder. Who of you knows the good old Microsoft Office macro recorder? Yeah, very good. Everybody knows that, and that is the basic concept of RPA. So RPA is a product where you can kind of automate the manual steps on your UIs. So the goal is that not the employee is typing all the data into the UIs, but the product does that. So you can record all the manual steps, and you can save them, and you can kind of replay them every time you like. And this brings value, of course, because before this, these RPA tools, we weren't able to access them in a right way, in an automated way. And now RPA is kind of an additional adapter to also make it happen that you can integrate legacy systems like this into a holistic workflow. So then it's, when you have a normal workflow like this here, you can integrate applications with API, you can integrate applications with in the Microsoft service world. You can also integrate human workers, and now you're also able to integrate these legacy applications via the RPA tool. So how does that work? When I go back to my model, this means I just drop this communication here. So basically, this means we have another pool here. It's not so easy to model this here. So we have a collapsed pool. I just make that small. That is RPA. And now we can change this one here to a service task. And that from here we can communicate with the RPA tool. The RPA tool is then communicating or accessing the UI automatically of the CRM system. And also the way back, we are getting, or RPA is getting the data out of the CRM system and then pushing that back to the Camunda process. That is the theory. And now we wanted to have a closer look on that if this is really feasible, if that works. So we really had a deeper look into two RPA solutions. One of them is UIpath, the other one is called WorkFusion. Let's start with UIpath. I already also have that installed, so I really want to show you how that works. So this is the shiny UI. That is your robot center, where you can create all kinds of robots. And what you can do here is pretty straightforward. So for example, you can say, okay, you want to have, I just restart that. You can kind of define all kinds of different flows that then do interaction with all kinds of applications you have on your computer. So let's start a new project here. And what you could, for example, do is you could say, okay, I want to open a browser. And then out of this menu, you can just select that and paste it here, and then you can configure this and can say, okay, I don't want to open Internet Explorer, I want to open Firefox, and I want to go on Camunda.com, for example. Then let's go one step further. You can also have act with click events, so you can just add a click event here and say, okay, when I'm on Camunda.com, I want to click on a specific field within the website. So I have to open Camunda.com, and now I can simulate where I have to click or where the robot later on has to click. So I just click it here, and then it records, okay, I want to click on Learn. And then you can see that is kind of recorded. And then let's go one step further. Let's do another click here. I have to go on Learn right now. So when we are on Learn, I can say from here, I want to go on Events. And I think you already know what I want to achieve. I want to have another click here. When I'm on Events, then I want to click on CamundaCon. And that is now all recorded. And now I can just replay that. So when I just close my browser, and when I press that Run button, the RPA tool does exactly the same that I defined. So it opens up the browser, clicks on, what was it? Learn, Events, and CamundaCon. And here we are. So as I already mentioned, macro recorder. So that is the basic concept. Yeah, and now we wanted to integrate this kind of UIpath application into Camunda. So I've got a little example here. And to integrate that, we had to do a little bit more of that. So of course, we had to define a flow. I will show you that in a minute. But we also had to think about how can we really integrate that RPA tool with Camunda, and that is the way it goes. So this is kind of an artificial process here. And the blue parts are the integration into that RPA tool. So I kind of have to explain that. So we are starting the process. We are fetching all kinds of data with a service task. And then we add a so-called item to a queue. And to understand that, I have to introduce one more component of UIpath. That is the so-called UIpath orchestrator. And this is what we have here. So the orchestrator is, I think you can already imagine that, is the component that orchestrates robots. So we can configure how specific or different robots are being executed in a specific sequence, for example. Or you can also say, okay, I want to schedule a robot execution. Or you could also say, I want to have a queue, and external applications can push items into that queue, and as soon as they receive an item in that queue, then a specific robot is being executed. And that is exactly the way that we are going now. So from the Camunda process, we are entering an item into that queue and saying, okay, please execute the following robot. And then the UIpath orchestrator does exactly that. And the trick now is, or the question is, how is the data coming back to the Camunda engine? And that is nothing special, it's just a callback. So within the robot, we configured a callback that kind of via REST API gives the data back to the Camunda engine. Yes, and that we can directly see that in a moment. So before I do that, I want to show you some more components that are needed here. One component is, of course, the Camunda project. So when I go back to that process here, that is the process, and when I go open the panel, there's nothing special behind. So when I go to that service task, add new queue item, you will see a normal delegate for the technicians here. So when I open that up, that is really nothing special. So that is that delegate code, and luckily that RPA tool, UIpath, has an own REST API. So it's really straightforward to integrate with that orchestrator. So the orchestrator is nothing else like another tool, a CRM system that has a technical API. So because of that, that is really straightforward to integrate that orchestrator into the Camunda world. And this is exactly what we're doing here. So we're defining a JSON here with the item that we want to call, and here down under here we are calling that REST endpoint add queue item, and with this we have that queue item created, and then the robot is being executed. That is one component, and then I also want to show you the other component, and that is the flow within UIpath. So imagine we have got old API or an open application. I think I have that here. This is this example UI. So imagine this is an old .NET application, and that it only has that interface. So you can click all kinds of stuff here. So you can say which kind of transaction is it. Is it a deposit, a withdrawal? And depending on the transaction, you can type in all kinds of numbers here. So just an example for a legacy application. And the use case here is we want to automate the manual steps we would normally have to do as an employee into in that UI. And therefore, we created that little flow here, and that is also quite straightforward to do. So we are opening this application, then we are getting a so-called transaction item, and the transaction item is a component within the UI. This is exactly this here on the left. Transaction, so it's either deposit, withdrawal, or something else. We're grabbing that. And depending on the value, if it's not null, then we go this path here. We are storing all the data in variables, and then we are doing something more. There are also sub-processes here. I can double-click on them. And then we are grabbing further data from that UI. So we are grabbing something from cache in, something from on US check, and something from not on US check. And these are exactly input fields within this old legacy application. And finally, that is the final step, we are grabbing a so-called transaction ID, and that is also part of this application. This is this number here above. And that is basically the flow within UiPath. And now we can really play that. So we have got a Camunda engine as a Spring Boot application here. We have got the process, we have got that flow, and now we can see how that runs. So when I go to Cockpit, I think I have to log in. Yes. We can see there's exactly this process deployed. This is exactly this here. There's no instance currently running, and we also now we can start one of these processes with task list. I think I also have to log in here. Oh, that's fine. Okay, then I'll just start this process with some business key. And now we can have a look into Cockpit what happened. So what you can already see is the batch here is directly in that activity, wait for a robot to finish task. So obviously we already added the new item into the queue. So we interacted with that orchestrator. We can also see in that orchestrator when we have a closer look into that, here's that queue. When I open up this queue, you can see here at the top, this is exactly the item that I just posted into the UI orchestrator, so UIpath orchestrator. So obviously he received that, and now he's waiting. Also, the orchestrator is waiting that the robot is being executed. Normally this is done automatically, but we configured that demo that it's kind of manual. So the next step is, because we are waiting for the robot, is really to execute the robot. And this is exactly what I will trigger right now. So I can directly execute this flow here. I only have to go back. This one we want to execute. So this can also be done again by just pushing the run button, and then you will see a lot of things happening on that UI. So I'm just closing this UI because it opens that up, and then you see all kinds of data flowing in this application. So let's have a look how that goes. So now I press play. The application is opened. All kinds of data was filled in, and now we're out again. That's all the magic. Exciting, or? So let's have a look what happened really. So obviously we should have received that message from the robot now, and obviously that didn't happen. I don't know why. Maybe I should ask Ben. Let's try again. Start it. We have two here. I will run the robot again. And if that doesn't work, you have to believe me that this is the way it works. But let's see. Let's refresh here. I don't know what that was. So now, obviously, at least the one instance received the input from the robot, and now we can continue with the normal Camunda engine process. What I would like to show you is the tricky part here, and that is the callback. So this is also straightforward with UIpath, I have to say, because there's a ready-to-use component where you can kind of interact with HTTP services. So you can just say, okay, my endpoint is here is localhost, and then you can also define a post object, and you can just post that. So that is really straightforward to define that callback within UIpath. So with UIpath, I can say it was pretty straightforward to integrate that. And that idea of combining workflow with Camunda and UIpath is fine. And we also experienced that there's also a value when you're combining that we didn't have in mind, because you can with combining RPA and BPMN or Camunda, you can even harden your RPA process. So imagine that UI, the legacy API changes. Then normally you have the problem that your robot doesn't work anymore, because he really looks for specific positions within the application, and if the application UI changes, it breaks. And then that business analyst that is using that robot doesn't know what to do. So what you could do is, with a BPMN process, is you could react on these kinds of errors. So you can, for example, add an error event here. So whenever the robot sends you an error, you can kind of react on that and say, okay, then I create a manual task, and then I have to go on that application on my own and put in all the data and make the calculation or so. This is something that you could do. Another idea could be when you have to wait too long, or what you want to make ensure that you don't wait too long. You can also play with timer events. And if a robot doesn't react in a specific amount of time, you can react on that. So this was something that we had in mind, but that directly brings also value in within your RPA world, I would say. Then let's also have a look on WorkFusion. And that kind of works quite similar. They also have a studio where you can define your flows. It's called WorkFusion Studio. They also have a control center that is called WorkFusion Control Tower, where you can see you can also orchestrate robots in specific rows. What is important to understand is you can only orchestrate manual tasks and robots. So you cannot orchestrate API calls, for example, like Camunda does. So it's really focused on robots and orchestrating them. And what kind of made us sad is WorkFusion does not have a REST API. And then we thought, okay, is there a way to integrate that? And after one night, we had an idea. And I kind of have to explain that because it's a kind of hacky, but let's be honest, RPA is hacky, so why not try that out? And the solution is external tasks. And I think I have to explain that, what that means. I also have a little BPMN workflow for this. And this is our workflow here. So what we're doing, we're starting the process, we're again fetching the data, and then we're doing some robot stuff. And here we are using that external task concept. So when I click on that element here that's defined as external task, what does that mean? Normally, when I go back to the initial process, the communication between a third-party system and the Camunda engine is as follows. Normally, the Camunda engine calls the application. So the Camunda engine has the control of calling applications and is then afterwards receiving the answer. That is a very general pattern that we have. But you can also turn this communication around. So with external tasks, you can say, you start that process, and as soon as you reach that activity, do some robot work, the engine stops. And then that robot is calling the engine and is asking, do you have work for me? So we turn that around. We are not requesting the robot, the robot is requesting us. And that is exactly what we're doing here. So we wrote a script, I will show you that in a minute, it's kind of hacky, I mentioned that already, that implements an external task client within WorkFusion. And then WorkFusion calls the Camunda engine, asks for work, and if there's work available, then it executes the robots. And the robots also give back the data and complete the task, and then we can move on with the process. This is the way that really works, and that is kind of a general way if you have applications that don't have an API that you can use, but you can kind of code things like an external client, external task client in it. So how does that look like? Let's have a look into that. So this is that studio, WorkFusion Studios, and this is the way flows are defined here. So this is basically Eclipse, something from Eclipse. They kind of customized an Eclipse environment. And here you can see the flow. And here is the script. And this is our magic external client script. And as you can imagine, of course, normally the target group of RPA solutions are business people. And this is definitely a thing that business people will not do and aren't able to do. So this is a task for software engineers, of course, but still it's possible. So we implemented that external task client here, so we are interacting with the external task API here and asking for work. And we can also try this out. So in this little example, we're not using this old legacy API, but we are opening Notepad. We are typing something in Notepad, and then we are copying and pasting some things out of Notepad and give this data back to the process. So let's directly start this. Cockpit. This is the demo. No process instance running. And let's start the external task example and go back to Cockpit. And as you can imagine, now we are waiting at exactly this activity here. So the Camunda engine fetched the data, the demo data, and now is waiting for the call from the robot. And now I can start that robot. This is done here. And now you can see how that takes a bit of time. Now you will see the Notepad is opening up, then we will type something into the Notepad. It's like magic. And yeah, let's see what happens. Here we are. My hands are free. That is the robot doing stuff. Nine of 10 tasks, 10 of 10 tasks. Okay. And now that a robot is still waiting, so there's a scheduler behind, so he's asking for work every second or so if there are more tasks to do. That is exactly that external task idea. So I'll just stop this. We'll go back to cockpit, and I think you already know what will happen here. We receive the data when we go to task list. Just refresh it. We have a new task here that says greetings from the robot. So this is the way it kind of worked. Okay, I'm glad that all the demos worked. Okay, let me summarize that. So what did we learn? What is RPA? Just as a summary, RPA is a tool for automating interactions with user interfaces. It's not a holistic BPMN engine or workflow engine. It's really that macro recorder thing. You really have to understand that because there's so much hype around this topic, and it's nothing else but that macro recorder. And we see a lot of vendors that initially or in the past have developed things like Selenium or tools for testing UIs, and now they're kind of selling that as an RPA solution. So I think that is really important to have that in mind, what it is and what it isn't. And it's a good solution for integrating legacy applications. And of course, if you ask us if we would kind of recommend that this is your strategy for digital transformation, I think Jacob already mentioned that. Of course not, but it's kind of a workaround for now that you can interact with these kinds of applications. Does it work? Can we interact between RPA and Camunda? Yes, we can, and it's quite possible. Especially with UIpath, it was quite straightforward because we had that REST API. So it was really, as I already mentioned, nothing else but like a normal application that we integrate. Or there are different ways, like using that external task client. So even if an RPA doesn't have an API, which is kind of strange, but things are how they are, then you can also integrate them with this external client approach. The value, full automation for workflows. So I already also mentioned that. So with integrating RPA, you can now, and when you have that situation that you have a legacy system that you can't integrate with a technical API, you are now able to really fully automate your process with using RPA. And you can even increase and harden your RPA flow by using the power of BPMN. That is all I wanted to share with you. I don't know how the time is.